Overdrive this week, an SUV battle royale. Fiat Tiga, the new 3 Series and more on auto selector. Hello and welcome to Overdrive. I'm Shireen. And on the show this week, we've got plenty of heat, dust and expensive metal. That's right, it's time for our mid-size SUV mega comparison. The boys are parked and waiting on the outskirts of Mumbai, so without further ado, I'm handing it over to them.
The X1's claim to fame is its phenomenal power to weight ratio. Now the X1's got the smallest engine in this contest. It's just a 2-litre common rail diesel engine, but it's carrying along just 1.57 tons of torque weight. That means you get phenomenal drivability, you get great performance and wonderful efficiency. On the performance factor, well, this does 100 kilometers per hour in just about 8.8 or 8.9 seconds. As for efficiency, well, you could easily stretch this car out to about 14 to 15 kilometers per litre on an average.
While it would be completely dwarfed if stuck in a parking lot with present company overnight, the BMW X1 is actually one of the most popular vehicles in the segment, which just goes to illustrate why we really buy SUVs.
The X1 is the odd man out in this test. Sure, the Koleos, the Santa Fe, even the Outlander for that matter, they're all based on car platforms. They are monocoques. But the X1, this is the most car-like in this test. This is the 3 Series with slightly better ground clearance. And I mean only slightly. And that means the X1, it cannot even clear big speed breakers or even small boulders or rough patches. So you can't take this off-road. The other downside to it is the ride quality. It is very stiff. Now the 3 Series, we never really faced its ride quality. With the X1, it is even worse. Everything feels very heavy in the X1. Even the steering, it is just too heavy. It takes too much effort out of you, and that is a big downside to this car. Notice I said car. The driving position is very car-like, the ergonomics are very car-like, it is very nice, and the handling is also the most car-like. The handling though can only be exploited when the roads are perfectly smooth.
With its prices ranging around 28 lakh rupees, the X1's biggest appeal is its badge. This is the cheapest BMW you can buy in India, and since entering the premium German owners club is not easy, the X1 is the ticket everyone is hankering after, even though it really does feel more like a car than a proper SUV, especially in current company. Like we said earlier, the Outlander is the oldest SUV in the test, and what's more, in this age of diesel power, it's the only one without even the option of an oil burner. But if fuel is not a concern, this is an SUV you'd buy for the aggressive Evo-inspired nose or even the Rally-inspired 2.4-litre petrol engine.
Now this engine is mated to a CVT transmission, and that is roughly just the one drawback with this entire drivetrain. And that's not because the transmission isn't nicely mated to the engine's torque curve. It's just that it's a very whiny transmission, it's a very noisy transmission, and that doesn't make driving this car very comfortable. It's got very sporty aspirations because you have this aluminium set of paddle shifts on the steering wheel. And well, shift quality is very impressive, it's very quick. But you just can't live with that noise, especially once the engine revs past 2,500, 3,000 RPM. It gets very noisy, very whiny inside this cabin. And that sort of ruins the entire driving experience.
What you also can't live with, especially in the current climate, is the fuel efficiency. 6.5 kilometers to the litre of premium unleaded in the city and an overall figure of 8.6 kilometers per litre is downright scary. A pity given the Outlander's off-road pedigree.
So how does the Outlander fare off-road? Well, it's not too great, but it's not bad either. This is a car with increased ground clearance, and you wouldn't really take a car off-road now, would you? But we did. We did take an Outlander 4 years ago to Lakh, and it was only in the most sticky circumstances that the lack of low ratio actually caused the Outlander to hiccup. Otherwise, the Outlander could take everything, and it came back from Ladakh with not a single squeak. And that is the key thing about Mitsubishi. These cars and their SUVs are built very well. This particular example has done 20,000 kilometers and is over 3 years old. And apart from a slight rattle from the front, there's no problems with this car. The tires have become hard, and that has got a negative impact on ride quality. But otherwise, unless you look at the odo, unless you see the frayed seats, you will never be able to tell that this car is 3 years old.
But unfortunately, the Outlander is not really in the purchase equation anymore. Mitsubishi though may still have a horse in the race in the form of the newly launched Pajero Sport, and we just saw an all-new iteration of the Outlander in Geneva. So if the Mitsubishi brand is what has you digging in the dirt, just hang on for a while, folks.
Renault might be French, but the Koleos is as French as sushi or kimchi. The platform is from the X-Trail, so that is Japanese. And the Koleos is built by Samsung Motors in South Korea. So the Santa Fe is not the only Korean in this test. The French bits are of course the engine and this quirkiness in the cabin. It's almost like the United Nations in here. But the good thing about the Koleos is that it uses the best bits from all corners.
Renault launched the Koleos in India to give the brand a presence in the higher end of the Indian car market. And in that respect, the Koleos is well spec'd with lots of electronic aids to keep you mobile off-road and an excellent Bose sound system to boot. Not to mention a refined diesel engine.
The 2-litre common rail diesel engine, it's a very strong performer. It's got about 150 PS of max power and 300 Nm of max torque, and that's capable for almost any situation, be it in the city, on the highway or off-road. What lets this car down, this SUV down, is its 6-speed automatic transmission. It is one of the slowest transmissions in this competition.
It is time for us to take our first commercial break. When we return, it's the Hyundai Santa Fe versus the Toyota Fortuner and Team Overdrive's verdict. Come back to us. Welcome back, you're watching Overdrive and our mid-size SUV mega comparo. Now the parameters are very simple. We want an SUV that's got a price tag of about 25 lakh rupees and has an automatic transmission. Two contenders are left, the Hyundai Santa Fe and the Toyota Fortuner. So let's head back to the boys in Naigaon.
Since its launch, the Toyota Fortuner has become an omnipresent feature on Indian roads, gaining a well-deserved reputation as a rugged, go-anywhere SUV with typical Toyota reliability. In December last year, Toyota added further value to the package with a facelift and the option of automatic transmission. But thankfully, they left the 3-litre diesel engine well alone.
Now that power and torque is delivered to the rear wheels through a 4-speed automatic transmission, the standard torque converter. But it's nicely mated with the power and torque curves of the engine. Gives the SUV pretty nice refinement. All the noises, vibrations are subdued and isolated from the driver and its occupants. This is a very nicely soundproof cabin. Efficiency is very high up the order. Actually, you really wouldn't expect phenomenal efficiency from such a massive engine.
Surprisingly, for an SUV test, the Fortuner is the only one that has a proper old school ladder frame chassis. And even though this automatic version only gets rear wheel drive, this is the big brute in this test. It's got massive ground clearance, lot of suspension travels, so you can just go over anything. It's built like a tank, so you don't have to slow down for anything. You can abuse it all you want and then just take it. Nothing will rattle, there will be no sounds, nothing. This one wants a beating, you give it a beating, it wants more, it just goes on and on.
The other critical factor in the Fortuner's favour is its price. At around 22 lakh rupees ex-showroom, it is tremendous value. But when you remove the four-wheel drivetrain from the equation, you start looking more at the interiors, reminiscent of the Innova and now dated looks.
The luxury SUV calling card, which also claims to have the most powerful engine with the most torque on demand, high levels of refinement and best-in-class efficiency. Now that calling card belongs to the Santa Fe. Its 2.2-litre common rail diesel engine, and we've tested this thoroughly, is certainly very powerful. The torque delivery is instantaneous. It's a very, very responsive engine. And of course, the efficiency levels are very, very high. In fact, once the tacho needle touches about 2000 RPM, the Santa Fe very capably can punch a hole straight through the ozone layer. It's that quick, makes it a lot of fun to drive, an effortless cruiser on the motorways, and very, very refined, very well-mannered in the city.
The Santa Fe has the best 0-100 time in this test and also the most cleverly designed cabin, though an overall mileage figure of 9.81 kilometers per litre is a tad disappointing.
Weird as it might sound, but some SUVs are actually better than the car brethren in terms of dynamic ability. Take Honda for instance. The CR-V was always much better to drive than the Accord, and it's the same with the Santa Fe. Now the platform is shared with the Sonata, and if you can recall, we didn't have too many nice things to say about the Sonata apart from it having a very good ride quality. The Santa Fe, it carries forward that ride quality. On-road and off-road, it is plush, it is very comfortable. Off-road, the Fortuner does have an edge because it has more suspension travel and it is softer. But as a mix of on and off-road potential and prowess, the Santa Fe is the most comfortable.
So Sirish, let's start with the smallest car, and I say this very consciously, car in this test, the BMW X1. It's really not an SUV, is it?
It is a car. It's a 3 Series, but it's not as nice as a 3 Series. It's stiffer, it is harder, it's too much work, it's too small. It doesn't really match up to other SUVs if you're looking for an SUV.
Okay, moving to the next one, the Outlander. It's 4.5, 5 years old now, and it's beginning to look it, especially in this company.
It is, and the biggest problem is it has a petrol engine. It doesn't have a diesel engine, and who buys petrol SUVs today? If that had a diesel engine, it would still be competitive even today. It is good. The package, the dynamic package is very nice.
The Fortuner with automatic gearbox is now only a two-wheel drive. Has that impacted what we've come to expect from the Fortuner?
It really doesn't make that much of a difference, especially not in this company. See, the other SUVs that have four-wheel drive here, they are on-demand four-wheel drive systems, and it works very well in slippery conditions, in ice, in snow. Where do you have that here? Our off-roading is all about clearing big boulders, no ground clearance, massive ground clearance, and that's where the Fortuner really scores because of its massive wheel articulation, huge ground clearance. It can cover anything and everything. It is a brute, it just flaws over everything.
But it's not the winner in this test, quite surprisingly in the end, because the Santa Fe?
Because the Santa Fe is like a car, but it is also a proper SUV. That is the key. The Santa Fe has got this excellent engine, great performance, great refinement, and it's got a special interior. That is the most important. When you sit inside the Santa Fe, you feel nice about yourself.
But Bert is still having a few reservations there.
Well, yes, I've driven the Fortuner as a long-termer and I had it for 6 months, and I really enjoyed that. It's big, it's intimidating, it's the kind of SUV I want to drive in Mumbai, on our roads, intimidate and bully everyone off the streets. This is a two-wheel drive. It's sort of, I'm a little disappointed with that fact. It's also an automatic, so the fun factor is reduced a bit more, 6 degrees of separation.
And since we spend a lot of time in our tracking car, which is an Innova, you step into the Fortuner and you go, wait a minute, I've seen this before.
Well, exactly. See, basically, if you want a big, fat, brutish vehicle, for big, fat brutes, Fortuner. Otherwise, for the rest of us, the Santa Fe, it fits the bill perfectly.
Well, score 1 for the SUV from Hyundai, but just to prove that there's nothing static in the Indian car market, we've got a new entrant. It comes in from Audi, it's the Audi Q3, and we'll get you an exclusive first drive report on Overdrive in a short while from now. Time for a quick break here on Overdrive. When we return, Fiat Tiga, the new 3 Series and more on Auto Selector.